Hi there. Welcome to the Artist Appeals, the podcast where we try to answer the question, how do you make money as an artist? I'm your host, Erin Sperler, and today's episode, we talk with a highly acclaimed artist. He's a science fiction fantasy artist. His work has been on Magic cards. He's illustrated many a scene from Middle Earth and Lord of the Rings, and he is won lots of awards, including the Hamilton King Award for Excellence, Society of Illustrators 2008. He's won the World Fantasy Award for Best Artist 2004. He's won several silver and gold awards, as well as honorable mention from Spectrum's Best of Contemporary Fantastic Art. He's won 18 Chelsea Awards from the Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy Artists, including their World Award for Artistic Achievement in 2002. And he's won the Hugo Award for Best Professional Artist in 2006, 2007, and 2009. So without further ado, please help me welcome our latest interview with Donata Giancola. All right. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. I love starting out with these 5 rapid fire questions. So I'm going to hit you up real quick with number one. What is your number one top selling piece of all times? What is your most popular or most successful piece that you've ever made?
Oh boy, top selling. Well, I get, you'd have to go to like prints and things, but it'd be probably the Golden Rose. It's a picture of a woman and her friend nursemaid on the beach with some mermen dead around them, like waves washing up. So it's a very tragic image, but it was my most awarded piece, and it's been one of my best-selling prints. And I've seen artists referencing it from all around the world, Europe, China, South America, Australia.
Like riffing off of it. Like doing
no, just either commenting about it or sharing it, and just I know that it's out there. It's just it's beyond my control. It's just copied and pasted and populated all over the place.
So it's taken on a life of its own.
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting. Yeah. Why do you think that one?
It's graphic for one. I designed, it was a book cover illustration. So I intentionally designed it to have a certain level of graphic structure to read well. And then just the tragic nature of the narrative that I utilized. It's not about glorified battle or conflict or even like cultural. Well, it's certainly Western mythological, right? Because of the mermen and actually they're mermen, they're not even mermaids. So they're, but it's the idea also of saying goodbye to somebody who's dying, comforting, like a dying friend or someone who has recently passed to say goodbye. So it's a universal emotional condition that spans every single culture, right?
Right.
And that's part of what I like to do in my work is try to find connections, visual connections, emotional connections to my audiences, so that you don't have to have the language barrier disappears and you communicate right emotionally to an audience.
Oh yeah, that is so powerful. And that actually, number two, the second question is, what is the one thing you love to create, do, or make? It sounds like that leads into it.
Well, it is. Boy, I love telling stories. And whether that's through science fiction, fantasy, surrealism, contemporary realism, mythological histories, it doesn't matter. And across the board, what I tried to do is just communicate human connection, human stories. And so I don't tend to draw a lot of paintings with monsters and creatures in them.
Right.
Usually if they are there, they're usually in service of another narrative, or I inject the creatures, with emotional structure to try to connect, them to the humans that might be, represented in those images.
Interesting. So on the flip side, what is the one thing you really hate to do or create or make?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, hate. It's not so much that there's a thing that I dislike, but there's a methodology that I don't like, and that's being told what to paint. As a creative individual, it's like, well, why you went to the craft store, right? Or you're like frustrated with that choice
Yeah.
or lack of choice in a way. So the lack of choice, being a creative person, is what I try to steer clear of. So if someone, a potential client, sends me a list of things they want to have appear in the illustration and how they want it to feel, then it's just starts deadening my initiative. And usually I just say no. It's like, yeah, find somebody else. Luckily I have other choices, and I have enough other material and audiences that I don't have to take everything that comes in the door.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, what is the funniest or weirdest experience as an artist and creating that you've ever had?
Funniest or weird? Wow.
Like, have you ever, well, for example, have you ever had a piece stolen or maybe damaged? Don Mates was on, and he told the story of driving away with wet oil paintings on his car and then flying off before a very, very important presentation in New York City, and going back and finding them getting like driven over in the sand and the salt and the snow, wow, and having to fix them.
That's not, see that there's that phrase, tragedy is when someone else dies. I know it's funny is when someone else dies, and tragedy is when you stub your toe, or like that, like what you're talking about. Like, I don't think that would have been funny to go back and find your painting in the moment, right?
Right. No, he said he was like blubbering in the middle of the parking lot of like a McDonald's because it was 3 pirate paintings that he did, and he had a presentation in New York City that they were due at in hours.
Wow.
And he tried to fix them up, and they eventually merged and became Captain Morgan. These paintings that were
really,
yeah.
So he actually pulled it off.
He did. Yeah. He pulled it out.
Boy, funny. Yeah, I don't. Boy.
Funny, tragic, weird.
Yeah, tragic. No. I guess I've never really thought about my art like quite like that, of strange moments. I'm sure there's a lot of anecdotal things I could probably pull out.
Throw one out there. What's your favorite anecdotal moment? Has anybody ever said anything to you that just
there's like embarrassment things, like actually it doesn't even have to so much do with art making as much as just my age or incompetence with something. So, I'm giving a presentation at the Society of Illustrators maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm getting up to the podium, and they hand, my presentation is on a laptop.
Right.
I've never owned a laptop. And so they hand me the laptop. It's an Apple laptop, so it's nice and slick and smooth. And I have no idea. I've never handled a laptop. I don't know how to open it. So here I am in front of this audience of people, and I'm like, where did you grab?
So that's fantastic.
The thing is, I'm pretty computer savvy. I mean, I write my own HTML code for my website for 10 plus years.
Right.
I updated it. I use it. All this, but I've never used a laptop until that moment. And so in Apples, since they're so smooth and slick, I didn't know like that little hole, like where to get your fingernail in, and the right side to open it up. So there you go. So that's like one of those dumb things that just I always remember in an embarrassment of what happened to me. So.
Oh, thank you. That's fantastic. I love it. Apple is really like, if you've never had an Apple product, they are so well designed and so organic that they really are like, what do I? And the functionality is so different than a PC.
Yeah, really I guess so, right? The interfacing software structures, right?
Yeah.
So, so there's one moment that I could, like, I think of,
Fantastic.
I have plenty of other stories, like, but I don't know if they're I don't think of them as comedic as much as just interesting little trips that I've been on and with art. Yeah.
What a long, strange trip it's been.
Yeah.
Right, right. Okay, so what is the one most important piece of advice you would probably give yourself today if you were just starting out again?
Oh, like go back to that young Donato
Yeah, yeah. What would you tell
uh,
yourself?
and tell more of my own stories.
Oh,
That's something that I see now. When we look at how pop our culture, not just pop culture, but culture in general, consumes ideas, consumes stories, that they're looking for new things, new ideas, not necessarily regurgitations on what's already come before. So
interesting.
like the things that we take now as like just cultural foundation, like Star Wars or Star Trek, right?
Right?
Tarzan or Conan the Barbarian or Harry Potter. Harry Potter's
Yeah,
more close, right? But move forward 50 years and Harry Potter will seem like this. It's always been there,
right.
right? But those had sparks of initiation by a single person.
Yeah,
Walt Disney, right? Walt Disney Studios now started by a single person, right? With their ideas, bringing a few people to work together,
right.
right? It's so that's the awareness that our culture and even probably world culture relies on imaginative plays of reinvestment in ideas and exploration
Yeah,
yeah.
I
So
think that's
that's
fascinating. So you're essentially saying you feel like these stories that become so foundational in our culture have to have a start somewhere.
right. Yes. Yeah, they
And
do.
so why not?
But they have.
Yeah,
There's not like it has, right? And it's recognizing the importance of that individual's contribution to
yeah,
what then, the butterfly that stirs into the tornado.
right,
Admittedly, there's more to Walt Disney Studios than Walt Disney, the person,
right.
right? So but that initial spark. And so I guess that's what I would like to go back to and tell myself. You don't have to always play in other people's worlds, even though
Mm,
I do. I love it. Like Tolkien, Middle Earth. I'm a huge Middle Earth fan. So I'm
yeah,
always playing it. But then I've got my robot series that I'm doing, my empathetic robots. That's all me.
yeah,
And so so in a way, I wish I had started that series 15 years earlier,
I see.
to start generating the volume of material like the way I have Middle Earth now.
Right, right. Are you writing a story to go with your empathetic robots? Are you gonna do a book or anything?
Nope.
Oh,
Like,
what?
I know, right? Because I'm not a writer. I'm horrible. Like, look, I make pictures, right? And
But you tell
I'm not a story,
stories.
but I am a visual storyteller.
Right.
And going back to that that comment that I made about emotional connection,
Uh-huh.
each one of my robot paintings is about emotional conditions. So
Mm.
I am attempting to create and tap into emotional moments without having to have a world built structure to
Mm-hmm.
organize those occurrences yet. So
Okay.
that yeah. So rather than like world building from externally, I'm starting from little nodes and seeing what connections are then created to then build the world.
I like that. Well, I mean, they don't necessarily have to be on a world either,
Right.
right? I mean,
That's true.
it could be Marvel's created the multiverse and changed our
Well, even like back in the 80s when I was reading comics, yes, that's actually part of the issue. Is like each like Spider-Man has his own origin, like Iron Man,
Yeah,
and DC was even worse because they almost had different worlds, like Gotham and
right.
Metropolis. Like Gotham for Batman, Metropolis for Superman. They didn't actually
Yeah.
kind of exist in the same world,
No.
and yet when they started having them interact, you had to justify it.
Right.
Yeah. So DC had this horrible universe problem of all these different universes that didn't operate together. So right. It's not my own, like I didn't invent this issue, this problem. It's been pre-existing.
You're just going to solve it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna no, I don't want to. No, because it's like, because where else are the new people gonna be, right? You want to have multiple. You want to have the multiverse because that's where the new ideas come from.
Yes.
Keep it going. Yeah.
Well, there's a last question that I've been liking to throw out. I've been wanting to throw out to artists, and this is a more philosophical one about money. Why do you think it is that some artists are able to charge a lot of money for their work and others never quite reach that point? Are there any great tips you could give people for increasing your prices and feeling comfortable with it and feeling comfortable with what you your asking price? I think, a lot of beginning artists, we tell them, raise your price, charge more. But how do you actually do that?
Wow. That's a tough one.
I know. I asked the hard questions.
Because it's a road that you travel, and it's a oscillating scale. Oh. So sometimes you can charge more, other times you can't. And it depends on the client structure, the marketing structure, and the reality is, just because you get better and you get older doesn't mean you're going to make a lot more money. And that's a tough thing to accept, that it doesn't, there's not like a guaranteed maturing price scale association with your work, that the older, better you get, that your prices automatically go up.
Right.
So that is like, that's hard. But the way value is added into work, it's I'm sure you've probably heard that there's no easy answer. It is related to marketing, and not so much that you're trying to push your ideas on people, but marketing and the idea that you create integrity and consistency over a series of works that then people can identify with what you do as an artist.
So you really think it's linked to your voice and collections and consistency, huh?
That's part, yeah. That's one that's one aspect.
Right.
Then there's the other aspect of getting, luckily, and this is not really talks so much about the inherent value to the artwork, but its association with pop cultural items. Like, let's say you as a book cover illustrator, you do Harry Potter's first novel cover, right? J.K. Rowling's first novel cover. Guess what? You just hit a gold mine. And it doesn't have to do with the integrity, right, of that individual image. It's just an association with a spin-off, a product. So it's, there's a lot of, like, it's hard to say, like, is it justified? Like, as an example of value, there is a comic page from actually, so that multiverse thing that we're talking about with Marvel's Secret Wars, back in the 80s, they were having a book about trying to cut off these loose ends, and Spider-Man is introduced with his new suit, all black, but it's the character Venom who's really lurking as the suit. Right. And so that page, that splash page in the comic, went for $3.3 million.
No way.
Yes.
Wow.
It sold at auction, at Heritage Auction, public. So two people slugging it out. Usually that's where value is added to artwork.
Right.
$3.3 million for a black and white splash page. And admittedly, the artist sold that page long ago, but
so they don't get any part of that.
They don't. It's I think it was Mike Zeck, who's the illustrator. So he doesn't get any more. But the spinoff is that all of those pages rise in value, right? Many of the associated pages, comic pages in general, have risen in value.
Fantastic.
So that's what I'm saying a little bit, is that being involved as a commercial artist, being involved with cultural connective product is a way to add value to what you do. And that means maybe working on other people's ideas, or actually making your ideas become culturally relevant, which ties back to what I would say, do your own ideas, because those can become part of that cultural heritage, that framework.
Oh, thank you. I actually think that's really fantastic advice. I mean, I had Clark Huggins on, and he was demonstrating his Reckless Deck, and we were talking about the whole IP thing, about developing IP, intellectual property, and that's kind of what you're saying, is get associated with a intellectual property or build your own. That's really where some of the value gets added.
Right. And sometimes they can take off. Probably truthfully, many times they don't. So, but
you got to keep trying, right?
But you do. But yeah, like I don't expect my robots or to just like suddenly go stratospheric. I'm creating them because I'm interested in stories they can tell, communicate through that, right? And I can sell the paintings. I make a living off it. So those are a consistency to the way I like to make art. But I'm making sure that I can build a world. So if I do want to leverage it, I can start ratcheting it up, and I have that availability, that possibility.
Very cool. Well, that leads us to A for art. So the appeals is an acronym: art, product, presentation, educate, amplify, licensing, and success. And so that leads us really nicely into, how do you make your art? Would you be willing to share with us just a little bit about your creation process? I'd love to hear a little bit about, how do you make your art? How do you create?
Wow. It's basically the same process. Starts with sketchbooks. I can grab one real quick right over here.
Yeah, let us see.
I mean, I've got just two dozen sketchbooks here. So they all start sketching, playing around with abstract. Here we get up close. So on, I guess, the right hand side or left, I got reversing out. One, there's the abstracts on one side and a larger drawing that I then communicate to my client, whether it's a book publishing, private commission. It's all the same. I'm always doing these abstract designs first. Some people call them thumbnails. I call them abstracts, because they're for me, they're more akin to playing around with shape design than specifics. And that's every single image I make, it starts that way. It starts with that thumbnailing, with that abstraction.
Right. I noticed you're using like black charcoal, maybe a white, and then
sometimes
sienna red. So just kind of a highlight, a dark tone, and a mid-tone. Right.
That's exactly it. I started with these tone sketchbooks for life drawing about 23 years ago now. So I
love toned paper. Have you seen Strathmore's gray journals? I love the gray ones.
Yeah, so I use the gray as well in my larger drawings, and then the brown. I think the brown was something I just fell into. Actually, the first sketchbooks, they didn't have gray, so I think way back, like Cachet was doing them. This other company made Earthbound, but the brown was it. So that's what I used for life drawing, and then I started implementing that in my commercial work ideas.
I love it because it allows you to do those highlights.
Yes. Yeah. Within seconds, right? Just a few touches of white chalk, you get a immediate sense of volume and contrast.
Right.
And
now, how do you take those from that to a full-blown work? Like, what is your commission process? Owen Garrett was on and John Siderius was on, and they both shared their commission process, which was fantastic because there were some little variations, some little tips or tricks that they, talked about. Do you scan them in? Do you?
From there? Oh,
Mhm.
well, the next step is then after I get that approval for those little larger drawings, like the full page drawings, then
Yeah.
I'll get my references. Then I'll photograph a model, get background elements, references, and all that. And then sometimes do a digital compositing of all these
Oh,
things
cool.
together, if it can work that way, or just print out and plaster a dozen or so images that are going to inspire me in the drawing. And then I
Do you
create a very
collage them? You collage them together, like
sometimes,
literally sometimes? Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
I've got stuff like kicking around like really close by. Let's see if I've got yeah. So here's an example. This is my daughter Cecilia. I've got to turn into she's got to be Lily Potter
Okay.
with a cat and the Marauders map there. So this is my digital composite with her and
Okay.
then moving, using a different head, a hand, and all of that. And
I love it.
Let me grab my drawing over here out of my flat files.
Let us see. Oh, I love those cabinets. Oh, were they handmade? Those custom cabinets?
What's that?
Are those custom cabinets?
Oh, no, they are oak furniture from like the 1920s.
Beautiful.
We had our area in Brooklyn here. We live next to a lot of antique dealers, or used to be. They're all gone now. And they sold. One person managed oak furniture, like office furniture, and so my whole studio is filled with this oak furniture.
Cool. Okay, let us see that sketch. So that's on toned paper too. You
get
the highlights.
This is the gray tone that you like.
I love it.
I can send you digital files of these if you want to like edit them back in. But this is Cecilia now with the with the drawing based off that photographic reference.
Right. Fantastic.
And then that now becomes the foundation for the final painting.
Do you mean an underpainting? Will you use that as an underpainting and attach it to a canvas?
I don't work on canvas, so I will make a copy of that, scan it in digitally, print it out on archival paper.
Okay.
And then mount the copy down to a panel board.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So what I'm actually painting on top of is a reproduction, a copy of my drawing, not the actual drawing itself.
So, cool. So you'll have the original. So you could actually sell the original sketch as well.
That actually is a wonderful side benefit of the reason why I started doing this.
Okay.
So yeah, that is actually, speaking of how to make money. So that drawing itself could sell for $1,000.
Wow.
So if I mounted that drawing down to the board, I would literally be throwing $1,000 away.
Right.
So if we want to get to that idea of how to make money is like looking at leveraging my workmanship and craft choices in the process and how to monetize those sketches. That's why I've stayed making all my drawings on tone paper, preliminaries, on sketchbooks that I can either take out and sell if I need to. So it's all about just offering different price points as well in that process.
Fantastic advice. Yeah, totally. So I noticed that was really big. Do you photograph that or do you have a really large scanner? How do you get that in?
Oh, it's a piecemeal. So I have one of the large format scanners, but I still need to add, something like that takes 2 scans.
Okay.
And then just, composite, digital, photo merge and Photoshop is very easily done. And then the advantage, the big bonus here with something like that is once it's digitized, you can scale it.
Right.
So if you're rushed for a deadline, you bring it down a little bit. If, as an example, I mentioned that the merman painting that became very popular.
Right.
So that the drawing came out so nice and I really liked it.
Right.
Rather than making it only like a 20 by 30 inch painting, I made it 3 by 4 feet. So I
Ooh.
scaled it up huge because I was like, oh, I love this idea. And I made it a huge painting.
Mm-hmm.
And that painting sold for 6 times what I got paid for the commission with.
Nice.
So I leveraged both the commercial commission, right? The sale of the original. I could sell the drawing if I want to,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm keeping the drawing because I really like it. So
Yeah.
these are all like, again, because I had a digitized version of that drawing, right? It was flexible in what I could do with it as an
Fantastic.
artist.
What kind of printer do you have? Sounds like you have a large format printer. Or
Yeah,
do you
years
use?
ago I did. Yeah, I bought one of the Epsons, the 24-inch wide printers.
Okay.
Uh, but
Fantastic.
but before that, just again being realistic, not everyone has 3 or 4 grand kicking around.
Yeah.
You can go to places like now it's FedEx Office, and
Right.
they have large format printers. You could get something outputted from that and use that as a foundation if you wanted to.
Fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of other like you don't have to own these big machines until you get the money. There's
Yeah.
other printing resources. You can actually now print on board, like just bring panel board, and there's now like flatbed scanning printers now where you could just like sign printers. But
Really?
you could do that for your art. You can use the same kind of printers to like make copies of your art and then use that as a foundation. That's
Yeah.
another option.
That is
Yeah.
really cool. I have learned so much from these podcasts about just from talking to artists about that process because I do a lot of abstract painting, but just, for
Oh, yeah.
wall decor. And the process and this idea that you're allowed to use references, that you are allowed to make sketches and do underpaintings and enlarge them for the larger piece was a novel concept to me. I don't know why.
Oh,
I
right. Yeah. It was almost unheard of, actually, right? It was
yeah.
like when I start, like, yeah, we didn't have that option 25. I guess it's almost 30 years ago now. Like
Yeah.
to be able to digitize things or color printing that on large scale, like that
Yeah.
was so prohibitively costly if you wanted something like that.
Right. Like you had to do a little sketch and then maybe you would try and transfer it to bigger and you
Yeah.
were, measuring and transferring and measuring and
Yeah.
transferring and so this idea this not is fantastic. It's
No.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I loved what you said about making multiple products. I know Christopher Burdett says that he uses his line art to create his character line art to create coloring books. So he has the line art that becomes a coloring book, and then the art itself becomes the final product, and then he has the book. So that leads us to product, which is what you were talking about, and how you create multiple products. What would you suggest, or what tips or tricks or advice would you give about like products and turning your art into a product and that fine line between fine art and product?
Wow.
Is there one for you, or
I'm not much of a product person in that. Even though I offer giclée prints on paper and canvas of much of my work, I tend to believe, for me, the value is vested in the originals,
right?
Of what I do.
But the original is a product too. Like you were saying,
right.
The sketch is a product, the commission is a product, and then the original is a product. I think that's fantastic advice.
And yeah, so I guess I have different uses of or justifications of why I make product, like prints, I guess reproductions in a way,
yeah,
of what I'm doing. And I think of them almost always as ways to reach a broader audience, of not so much the idea of making profit from them, but rather building fans of what I do.
Oh, I love that.
And so when I make and quote unquote a product, for something like a booklet or print, I'm more thinking about who is going to like this as a fan rather than how can I sell this? Right. So I'm making something because I know somebody might like it as a fan, not because I'm just making something to try to sell to make money.
No, that's great. I use the term product just because I find as an artist that selling my originals, I would get attached to them, kind of like you do children, and it was hard to let go of them. And so I needed to way to kind of disassociate from the original. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I just have so many children, it just doesn't matter. You just start getting rid of them at some point. They clutter the house. They make the place messy. Just have more children there, and that's it. That'll solve your trouble. But I understand that preciousness, right? Because if it's something that you make, you have you've got an emotional attachment to it, right?
Right. I love your concept, though. Thank you for sharing that of thinking them as ways to connect with more people.
Yeah, and actually, that's why, like even my originals, I don't. They're mine, but they also belong. Guess what? We're gonna die, right? And all those great people I mentioned, like Walt Disney, J.R. Tolkien, right? They're dead, but their ideas are propagating because they shared their ideas either through painters do it through their work, or through galleries, exhibitions, popular media product, right? Making movies, things.
Through presentation.
Comics. What's that? Oh,
through presentation, which is the next step.
Yeah. And so so that product is actually very important to helping to build that cultural, intellectual property idea, right? You're not going to get to that threshold of everyone or many people demanding and wanting to see what you do unless you use product, right? Books, prints, mugs, pins, coloring books, like you mentioned with Christopher. You have to have those things in order to break that threshold or reach that larger threshold.
Right.
So,
yeah. And presentation is the next step, the next subject. So what tips or tricks would you give people about presentation? How do you like to present your work or lessons you've learned?
That's, oh boy. I guess I've learned not to cut too many corners on presentation. That it's, for myself, I would rather only show 3 or 4 framed, nicely well maintained pieces rather than a bin full of 30 or 40 drawings that are inexpensively or cheaply presented. So there's a certain amount of aesthetic of craft and care that I believe that people respond to.
Right.
So for me, presentation is part of like the packaging of culturally signaling to an audience that this is something that's valued.
Right.
Even if they don't, even if they might not initially value it, that obviously the care taken with this structure of presentation shows that it is valued by somebody.
Yeah. It's perceived value. If you treat something like it's valuable, other people perceive it as valuable.
Yep. And that gets back to the idea of pricing, right? So I've learned that if you take a $500 painting and you put a nice frame on it, you spend, let's say, $250 as a frame on it, you might be able to charge $2,000 for that painting, rather than taking a $500 painting, saying, I don't want to put money, I'm going to just put a $50 frame on it and sell it for $600, right? So that's part of the value, like we're getting, tying back to that value idea of, by attaching value, and it first starts with you as an artist, right? You have to care first mostly about your work.
Yeah.
And so by building value into it from that very initial offering, then that helps to create a baseline of integrity upon which other people experience your work.
How do you maintain your work? You said nicely maintained pieces. In transporting work and going to shows, things get damaged and busted up and
Oh
scratched. And
yeah.
do you have any tips or tricks that you use for shipping and
Oh, I'm
transporting
cheap as
any?
I'm cheap as hell, Aaron, when it comes to shipping. So that's the conundrum of if you ever work with me, you'll see me like put this $2,000 frame on a painting, and
Mhm.
then I'm shipping that sucker by FedEx ground, really cheap, like I mean, not relatively cheap, right? I'm using
You
pine wood
gotta save
boxes.
money somewhere.
Yeah,
So
that's right. So right, you're right. Yeah, and that's the budget issue. I don't insure my paintings when I ship them. It's a good because it just comes down to like how much money is insurance gonna run,
mm,
and how often am I shipping these things? And to be honest, I haven't lost a single painting. I haven't. Luckily, I've been
knock
lucky.
on
Yeah,
wood.
yeah. I mean, I've had paintings that are the frames have gotten dinged up. Luckily,
Right,
not the expensive frames because
right.
I do pad like
Oh, of course.
appropriately.
Of
But
course.
yeah, there is those. But shipping, those are aspects of where I try to maintain, you know, uh, a
That
frugal approach
that makes
towards
sense.
marketing.
So
Yeah.
spend the money on the frames, but save some money on the shipping if you can. So do you like make your own pine boxes and stuff, you
Yeah,
said?
yeah, my own pine boxes. I live in New York City here. People throw away the most amazing garbage and packing materials. I don't buy bubble wrap. I
You
find it.
dumpster dive.
I don't need a dumpster. I walk down the street because people put it out on recycling night, and I just my kids will laugh at me because they used to joke about it. Now they see the value in it because you walk past like a nice 4-inch tube
Yeah.
on the street, and most
Yeah.
people like that's garbage, but
Yeah.
that's like, wow, if I cut that in half, that's 2 mailing tubes, $5 each, that's $10. Like
Nice.
that's like, would you pass by a $10 bill lying on the street?
No, no, no.
So that's my frugality, like it. And also it's recycling, so I'm like saving packaging, like it's
I'm
being
all about
sensitive
the
to the
recycled.
environment.
I'm
Yeah,
all
recycle.
about recycling.
Yeah, yeah.
Reduce, reuse, recycle.
Cycle, exactly. That's me. And so that's part, and that's part of the reason why I do it. It's like I don't like, why can't this stuff have a second life? And
Yeah.
so, and that allows me then also, to ship cheaply, but with lots of padding, lots of good padding, because I don't have to spend a lot of money on the expensive packaging because I get it for free.
I never thought of
Funnily.
that as an advantage to live in a New York City free packaging material.
It is, I mean, I am serious. I have never bought bubble wrap. And actually, one of my great finds one day was literally like a brand new roll. It's like a big roll of bubble wrap. And it was just sitting there in someone's garbage. Like, you're kidding me. Like a brand new roll, like someone, $15, $20 that someone would buy at a store. And
Ask and the
it's just sitting there
universe.
brand new.
Ask and the universe will provide.
Yes. Yeah.
Very cool. So, how do you communicate with your audience? How do you educate your audience as to the stories in your work? You said you don't consider yourself necessarily a writer, but you are a storyteller, visual
Very much.
storyteller.
Yeah.
Do you leave that open to interpretation? Do you do any
Yep.
write-ups on the back or on your blog? Like, how do you communicate and educate your audience as
I
to
don't.
your work?
It is purely, Aaron, it's purely visual. I tend not to provide backstory
Mm-hmm.
because in a way, like I mentioned, I sometimes don't even have a full backstory
Yeah.
to what's going on. Obviously, if I'm doing a book cover illustration, there's the book itself, the narrative of the book. So I don't even, again, most of my, probably the first 15 years of my career was really about book and game illustration. So
Right.
all the backstory was provided
Mm.
for me and my client. So I didn't have anything to add besides what was already given.
Okay.
But certainly in these later ones, like the robot paintings, astronauts,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the world built out. And they really are emotional
Mm-hmm.
for me, like the connections.
Right.
And I like the idea of like you mentioned, the ambiguous nature to interpretation. And that is what art is about. Sometimes it's about finding common ground between you as an audience and me as an artist. And that interpretive material of that art that I've made, it sits in between.
Right.
And so I enjoy seeing how people, like the merman on the beach scene. That's a scene that's not even in the novel. I kind of made it up for the cover. And it's like, you tell me the backstory there. I can tell you why I made it. Right. But it's also fascinating to see how they view it, what they read into the material.
Do you encourage people to write stories about your work and share them on social media or anything like that?
No, I haven't. No, that I guess I don't. I've had it done a couple times, and it's like, yeah, but that's not it.
Yeah, good try. No.
Yeah, it doesn't but it's fascinating. I think. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that. It's a dilemma as a highly realistic artist that I am. Right. And I'm taking sometimes vague words by a writer and making them into cement, like formative, very focused, detailed. But I hate it when people do that to my work and go back. So it's like, how I can't really be critical of that. Right. Because that's all I do. Like I take Lord of the Rings and I make them look real. And I show you how hobbits look, and I show you what Aragorn looks like. And this is what Gandalf looks like. And so I kill the imagination in a way.
I don't think so. No, I disagree with you, because that old expression of painting's worth 1,000 words.
Right.
I sometimes think visuals are more open to interpretation. Sure, it puts some visuals in your head of, they have brown hair, or they have this hair or that hair, but that emotional context that you imbibe into your paintings, I think that creates more story, more question, for me at least.
It can but on some different level, and for some audience, like as a very good example, like the Lord of the Rings movies, right? So up until the movies came out, there truly was a more pluralistic, creative landscape over what the Lord of the Rings was. Right.
It was very
old
open.
Enough to know that, right?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Right. And then the movies come out, boom, this is what Gandalf looks like. This is what the world looks like. This is what the Riders of Rohan look like. All because of how informative and connective a movie provides to its audiences. Right.
But I just mean like still images sometimes can because there's no before and because there's no after in the action. To me, some still images, some paintings like yours can create almost more of a question because you don't have that before and after.
Yes, they can. Yeah, right. And but it's also yes, I believe that too. Yeah. But it is funny that I do create very concrete images, but then that somebody that wants to write a story about my images, like, no, I don't say no. It's just like, go have fun with it. But I don't
that's not me.
I'm not going to be critical. I'm not going to be over supportive either.
Right.
It is, why don't you just write about your own stories? Right. In a way that I'm like, so I can be self-critical. I'm a commercial, you can see I'm vacillating. What I do to make a living is I very concretely interpret other people's stories, and then I go out and say, you should make your own stories.
But here kind of is how I'm tying this back in. So we're on educating your audience with story and amplifying, getting bigger. So kind of where I'm trying to lead this conversation a little bit is, how do you amplify? How do you scale? How do you get out there to more people? Now, you gave us one really great way, which was this idea of creating, say, prints to reach a
Right.
wider audience and to provide that wonderful connection and service where, okay, if I make prints of this, more people can have access to
Right.
it. So, there's so much stuff to cover when I'm talking to artists. That's why I created this appeals acronym, this art,
Yeah.
product, presentation, educate, and amplify. And it's because it's like, okay, well, there's so many ways to go about this. Let's put all this information in some kind of categories. So
Right.
I guess my question is, how do you scale? How do you get bigger? If you're educating your audience with visuals and you're providing them with your prints and stuff like that, how do you do more with less time? Like, your work is so wonderfully
It's frustrating.
right. What are
I
your
yeah,
tips and tricks for
oh, the
working?
tips.
And do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, and yeah, okay, yeah. Since I don't, I've had assistants over the years, but they're more
Mm-hmm.
like part-time here and there.
Mm-hmm.
My family doesn't really do much with my business. It's all really only me.
Right.
So like so when it comes down to, let's say, attendance at a convention or going to a comic book convention or a literary convention,
Right.
I don't go to all of them.
You
And
can't.
I'm very selective over what events I do perform at or participate in,
Right.
because of that. Time is like important, and therefore I need to make sure when I go to an event, it can be appropriately leveraged and connected to what I'm trying to do as a business person, because it's business. It's like, I'm a fan, but I also need to make a living, right? That's
Right.
the reality. That's why you're having me here, right? To talk
Right.
about the real
Yeah.
issues. So yeah, I have, actually, I wrote about this on the Muddy Colors blog that I'm a part of.
Oh, okay.
These 4 principles that I go through, or not go through, but assess the reason why I might go to a convention.
Okay.
And it's I remember
We'll
if I
have
can
to put
remember
a
them up.
we'll have to put a link to it down below. I'd
Oh, right.
love to
Okay.
read that
Yeah.
article. If you
I
want to
think very,
summarize, that'd be cool.
yeah,
Four
what I
principles.
remember. Again, it's more of like off the cuff thinking about it. There's one is education, right? To go
Okay.
there and learn. The
Okay.
other one is marketing, sales directly.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to make a profit selling your product.
Right.
2 is the social community that is
Mm.
there. So building reputation with peers, and educating each other with other artists, connecting to other artists.
Right.
And the last one is professional connections. Like,
Okay.
who are you going to meet there that has potential to hire you as an artist or work with as a gallery or whatever? So those are the
Right.
4 elements that I assess every convention. And some, have only 1 or 2, and
Right.
those I probably won't attend.
Mm-hmm.
But things that have all 4 are like no brainers, like San Diego Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con, Emerald City Comic-Con. These are
Okay.
huge events.
Right.
World Con, as it used to be, I'd say more, which is the World Fantasy and Science Fiction, World Science Fiction Convention that's held every
Okay.
year.
Where's that one? Does it move?
It travels around, so it's different places, because it does travel internationally and in the States here.
Okay.
But that has seen a massive drop off in professional artist attendance. So
Mm.
art directors and editors aren't there nearly in numbers that they used to be,
Right.
15, 20 years ago.
I love hearing about the different conferences and events that people choose to go to. It's, really important, I think, to hear, oh yeah, I go to this one, or oh, this one's really good, because,
Yeah.
you're not always aware of them. You
Yeah.
need somebody to say, oh yeah, check out this.
No, yeah, because otherwise, yeah, you're looking down a list, and this is what I share with my students when I teach, is that I share a list of, like, here's a bunch of conventions. And what's funny is that there's usually about 2 conventions every weekend in the States.
Okay.
So there's like over 100 science fiction and fantasy conventions you could go to.
Oh wow.
So like, which one, like, oh, like, you can't do them all. So like Dragon Con is another, like, that's what I've got. Mostly it's a little lacking on the art director, editor side, but otherwise it's like right up there. LuxCon is got all four of those aspects there. So these are that's what. And so Amplify, that's part of it, is I look at what I do with marketing and how can I get the most effective return on what I'm attempting to do. And it's not always about sales. I'm on social media structures, so I participate there, but I don't spend a whole lot of time because I just need to paint. I need to be here working.
Yeah. Very cool. How about second to last, licensing and contracts. So what tips or advice could you give our audience on licensing and contract terms?
Wow. Licensing, I almost do zero with. Erin. So I really don't have any spin-off licensing structures built into the way I work. I'm really heavily focused on the material uniqueness of the original art.
And that's fine. I include licensing because I've talked to quilt pattern designers.
Oh no, some people do, right? Yeah.
Right. For some people, it's a big thing. But I think with artists, we tend to be a little scared of contracts. And I think it's an important topic that we have to hit on, even as a fine artist such as yourself. You do commission work. What kind of terms do you maybe see in your contracts for commission work? Do you use contracts?
Oh no, that's the other side, is that contracts I do engage with all the time. So the most book publishing contracts are kind of artist friendly. They allow you to retain most of the publishing rights with what you do. Their game, like working for Wizards of the Coast, is basically a work for hire agreement. So you lose all licensing control of those images, and all that you have left is the sales of original and prints. They give you back the print option, but not an exclusive. If Wizards wants to make prints, they can do that as well. So I'm very much aware of licensing, or not license, like some of that licensing aspect with related to contracts. And and all the jobs I do, I work with contracts. If I'm doing a private commission, I write up I have a contract, a basic contract that I utilize in my dealings with private individuals, and I treat them just like commercial clients.
Right.
There's really almost no difference with the integrity. So
you give even private commissions a contract. You just say, oh, I'll send you over the contract.
If it's something a little major, like if I'm doing simple sketches, no. But if I'm doing a painting, like an oil painting, we're talking thousands of dollars. It also, it's a way to, like, we talk about that signaling of, like, I talk about framing, like spending money on framing. If you're, as an art collector, you approach an artist and they give you back a nicely formal contract that isn't overly legalese, it's a page and a half, but it lays out the terms and conditions of your money is going to be spent in a way, right? If someone's giving me $5,000 for a commission, I'm sure they'd like to know that they're going to get something, right? And they're just handing me the money and I'm disappearing like a shadow.
Right. Do you take a deposit and then another payment at sketch delivery and then another at?
I just do like thirds. I usually just do a deposit and then final payment.
Okay.
I've worked enough with people and being able to assess like who is a little sketchy and I just won't work. But that's super rare. That's almost never happened.
Right.
Most people, you get the deposit, they're gonna pay for the final. So I don't do sketching. Another payment at sketches, another payment halfway through final, and then the final. It's just deposit up front and at closing. And that's a way to communicate trust as well with your client. So that's a way to bond with your client, is to build that kind of trust. into your relationship.
Yeah.
And the contracts, again, are a great way to signal that you're a professional and you have this under management and you know what to do. You're not going to be spacey.
I love it. That's such a fabulous point. I don't think any other artist has made that point. So that is really cool. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's in that's a whole branding, marketing, being a professional about what you do and deliver. That's the because what you're trying to do, like it goes back. This is like bringing back the whole idea of pricing, right? The way you raise your prices is that you are confident in asking for more.
Right.
And you are not just confident in asking for more, but you're confident that you know your buyers, that you know your market, that price increase can be borne or possibly integrated into that marketplace. So I can't go out there and ask $200,000 for a small painting.
Right.
That happens in the fine art world in a weird way. But again, those aren't like the first out of the gate prices that artists will get. Right. But there's the certain knowledge and expectation in the marketplace that there's a certain, pricing structures are what they are. And sometimes I'm seen as being expensive in this marketplace, but I'm not excessively expensive.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you have to be professional about it. Do you have standardized pricing for your works? Do you price them by size or do you price them more? Do you have some rules that you use for pricing your work?
Yeah, I do have rules. It is not something that I publish publicly on my site.
Of course.
And partly because, to be honest, it's sometimes about knowing the buyer, or not the buyer, but your client.
Right.
That some people, when they see, let's say, a size painting, like 18 by 24 inch painting,
right?
Like that's so many square inches. And this is priced at $50 a square inch or something. I'm just throwing a number out.
They'll
whatever,
really
whatever
do that.
Is,
they'll do the math for per square inch.
Yeah, but for me, like doing a landscape painting with one figure in it takes 1/10 of the time than doing a battle scene with 30 figures, even if it's the same size painting.
Yeah.
So physically they're the same size, one takes a lot longer, a lot more craft. And so therefore I price accordingly. And so like when you're making a public list, it's hard to say this is why it's more expensive. But so when I talk people privately, then I can find out what they want to do, what they like in my work, and then I can pass them on the price list that corresponds with the interest in the content that they want to use and see brought to life.
Very interesting. So your pricing is more based on content, and I love that. That's great advice.
That is for private commissions. For commercial work, it's more flat. So book covers are pretty, like there's a like $4,000 to $5,000 range that I start at. And then that kind of gets negotiated a little bit based on what they're looking for.
Okay.
But commercial clients tend to need to have a price structure first, and then the content comes later.
Okay.
And sometimes private clients start with an idea first, and then they don't know the scale on what and price. So it's a little more amorphous, like what can come out of a private commission.
Yeah. And I think private commissions, they probably have less of an idea of the amount of work that goes into it. Maybe a little bit more explaining is necessary.
Sometimes, it can be. And, commercial clients though too, sometimes they don't know, like, can't you just do this? Like, no, it can't do it. Just do that. Yeah.
Totally. All right. Last letter, S for success. How do you measure and define success? Like, what are your measurements for success and how do you celebrate it? Because I found that I think a lot of artists, we create and we go, 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 and we rarely stop to say, yeah, that was good. let's celebrate that.
Yeah.
So, how do you define and measure and celebrate success?
Wow. I mean, there are certainly different ways of evaluating. One of the most important for me is sometimes peer recognition, peer comments. So from my fellow artists, illustrators, professional friends. So
Right?
when they tell me something is good, then it sinks in a little more so.
Yeah.
And so part of that is through like competitions. Sometimes if it gets in a competition,
Hmm.
that is juried and run by sometimes peers that I know, respect, aware of, right, within the industry.
Hmm.
So I never feel too bad about like this past season, the Society of Illustrators has their annual competition.
Hmm.
And I sent in, I don't know, 5 pieces of mine where I thought were really good.
Right.
None of them got in, like 0. It's like, so that is not my audience, right? Those peers who are evaluating that show do not care about my work.
You probably should have just sent something you hated in, because I find that anytime I send in pieces for a juried exhibit or to my agent or something,
Yeah.
they always pick the one that I hate. Not hate,
Oh,
but the one that I'm like,
you
eh.
like the least? Yeah.
Yeah, and then it
But
inevitably.
but that's why but even within that context of jurors, there are jurors that I knew who would probably like it. So but I'm not enough of the other jurors, because you have to have usually a threshold of votes. So even
Right.
if I get votes from people who I know who like it, but again, this is just one part of evaluation, that like peer evaluation. Like juries are just one way. Another way is going to shows and
Hmm.
publicly sharing what you do and
Yeah.
just talking to other people,
Yeah.
sharing, social media. And it's not so much how many likes you get, but just whether 1 or 2 people who you really respect see it or comment on it.
Right.
That's right. That's validating in
Yeah.
itself. And
Yeah.
then the other part, like we're talking about sales, if something sells really well, that's another way to get validated.
Hmm.
And lastly, many times it's just, did I feel good about what I made?
Right.
Does it communicate the integrity in what I'm doing? And does it motivate me to do another one? And
Yeah.
the positivity of making original artwork is that you sometimes only have to connect with one other person who will buy that original. So it doesn't matter if you got 30,000 likes, if you have 5 likes, if that one person who likes what you're doing connects with you and buys that original, that's the one like you really needed to get.
I like
Um,
that.
so it doesn't, like, the numbers are, yeah, they're part of the game, but they are not the only way to evaluate what you're doing as an artist.
Do you ever celebrate? Do you ever do anything special to celebrate?
Um, no, I like, like go out for dinner or something. No, I think the celebration just comes from the fact I get to do this again. I get to sit down again next week and
Yeah.
continue. And I guess in a celebration, like I'll make a mini booklet of
Oh,
like a collection, like robot. Like I 2 years ago, I made a little collection of my robots and put them
yeah.
into a little booklet. So I guess that's a form of celebration by saying, oh, and I've done that with dragons and with other. So yeah, in a way, that's my way of celebrating, is to make something that I can then share with an audience. I'll send it to collectors. I'll send it to other friends. It's like, here, or, I guess some people, you can do that with a book. Like I did that with my Middle Earth book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've got a 200-page book of all of my Middle Earth content. I think I've got one over here.
Now you're making me want one. I love books. I love to collect books of people
Oh, you
I've
do?
talked
Okay.
to, and yeah. I love beautiful. Oh, isn't that
So,
gorgeous?
speaking of like product, so this is one of those examples of like making a big book, and
Hmm.
it's just it's full color inside.
Ooh,
some double
beautiful.
page spreads here.
Ooh,
And so this is all my Middle Earth content that I've made as a fan.
oh,
So 200
nice.
pages, large, oversized, from Dark Horse Publishing. And so that's, but yeah, so here's like monetizing. I've made almost no money off this book. So this is where a little failure on my part with licensing and the rights and my royalty arrangement.
Right?
Yeah, but I should say, like, again, it's like, it's looking at why you're doing something.
Right.
So this book has had a long development, and so it was a success. So the first print run sold out, which is like 4,000 or 5,000 copies. Yeah, that's so right. So, but I didn't make a whole lot of money. So but directly off the sales. So the way I'm making money is that it cements me as a Middle Earth artist. So when I make a new drawing, that goes back to that, like Spider-Man, right? The Mike Zeck, like the drawing, like that's, so his artwork, everything suddenly gets rising because of that high valuation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the number of guests who have been on that have a book in some context or another. But Rebecca Karuba said it pretty well. She's actually a Zentangle, like she does Zentangling, which is like doodling instructions.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so she's got like 5 or 6 books, and she said these are my golden ticket into places. They give me credentials.
Yes.
They get me workshop gigs and speaking gigs and teaching gigs. She said they don't necessarily make money on their own, but what they do is they give you
Yep. Perfect.
Status, I guess, or credentials.
Validation, cultural validation status. And as a fan, it was really honorable to like being able to say, I've got a Middle Earth book. As a fanboy. And so that's really,
as a fanboy.
But it's that validation. It becomes a shopping place for people who want to buy a painting.
Oh, good point.
There's that. So that's what I'm saying. Like it's like the idea of when you go to a comic book convention, I see so many artists that go in there and their focus is upon retail, monetizing the event that weekend. And focus is all about sales of their product. And they forget about those other 3 factors of, professional networking, community building, education. And those are, that's what, so like a book is more, right? You're pointing it out. The other artists have pointed out that book is more than the retail sales of that book. So much more.
I've had so many artists on that have books, and they vary so widely from coloring books to instruction books to intellectual property and world building. So there's so many varieties of books that you can do. But I think that's neat that you use it as a little reward for yourself.
It's that's that celebration aspect of success, is like I'll want to collect it and share it. And so that's when I know I've done something good. So that's a large threshold. That's not like 1 or 2 paintings, right? We're talking, this is like a groundswell, a multitude of imagery.
I think it's really gratifying when you see a body of work.
Yes. Yeah, it very much is, right?
Yeah. The power is in the body of the work.
Yep. And that swings, that connects a lot of what we've talked about today, Aaron, is like that idea of price rising, success, marketing. It's a when you have a consistency of voice that unifies what you do artistically, then that becomes, again, that wonderful linking structure that allows you to celebrate, to market, to leverage that connective material amongst all of those images and products to create a strong kind of integrity to what you do as an artist.
Yeah. Hey, where can people get your book? Where can people hire you? Where can they take classes with you?
Oh,
Hook us up with contacts.
wow. Boy, a lot. I guess I'll have to email those to you, but
Yeah,
I
we'll put
teach
them
with,
down below. Well,
yeah.
what's your website to start?
Oh, website is just donatoarts.com, plural. So Donato Arts with an S on the end. And I've got an extensive amount of material there, imagery, some short videos, how-to videos.
I've watched them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
They're
Great.
good.
Let's see what else. I teach. I have a kind of like a semesterly class. So spring semester it's sold out already, but I only teach
Damn
eight.
it,
I
I
only
want
teach
to take
eight
it.
students. So it's a very small class,
Is
but
it
it's
online?
online. Yeah, it's online. Yep.
I want to take your class.
Yeah.
I
I'll
do.
put you through the grinder. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I
Let's
haven't
see.
done figure painting in a long time.
Oh, I don't teach painting. I teach storytelling. So
Oh,
yeah, that my focus is on communicating narration and story. So
okay.
yeah, I mean, admittedly, I will introduce my principles, my painting and
Uh-huh.
the process, but I don't project that onto my students. I
Right.
work with what they're doing with
Right.
their ideas, with their techniques. Yeah.
Now, is your class linked off your website? Could people get notified if they want to take your class when it reopens?
Oh yeah, it's buried in there. Yeah, it's the thing is it's sold out like within 2 hours, I think, this year, as soon as
That's
it went
great.
live. So it's with the Smart School, but yeah, you can find the link there on my website.
What is Smart School?
Smart School is Rebecca Gay is the artist, illustrator, painter that
Mhm.
started this 12, about 11 years ago.
Okay.
And so it's been running, yeah, since.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, and so it's not with like an institution or anything. It's just a small group of artists, like 10 or 12 of us, that offer classes. And Rebecca
I
is the
think
organizer.
I think I heard about that at a LuxCon.
It's a spin-off from the illustration masterclass. I don't know if
Okay.
you've heard of that, but that
Okay.
was a very successful in-person event. And then
Mm-hmm.
COVID killed that. Yeah. So
Darn
this
you,
has been,
COVID.
I know, yeah, we're all looking forward to getting back to
Yeah,
in-person events. Yeah.
I am. I am. Definitely am. Well, thank you so much. This has been fantastic talking to you. Thank you.